Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Believe It Saints. He is Terrence Copper. I am David Grubb. And I guess at this point, there are still games to play, but the season is effectively over. It's over.
You know what? I think it's weird. I guess mathematically, we still got a shot to make the playoffs,
Yeah, but
but we
it's
got to win out.
and the Bucs got to lose out.
And oh my God, yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough, man. Uh, my question is, with the bye week coming up, do you give the guys rest because they need it? They need rest.
They need
They've been
mental
rolling for
rest
it,
more than anything else.
right?
I think that they're done mentally.
Hmm.
This hasn't been what they expected. Um, we could talk about the injuries, but last year this was the most injured team in the NFL, so they're used to adversity in that regard.
Hmm.
They're not used to failure, and that's
Yeah.
what this team has experienced this year is failure. It's not losing. Again,
Hmm.
losing when you compete at your best, and if you did everything you could, you leave it out on the field. I think that, and you get beat that week, you feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
But there's in these 9 losses that we talk about now. How many do you don't feel good about any losses, but how many do you feel like, man, the Saints gave it their total effort this season in those games, and you feel like they could walk off the field with their heads high? There's not a lot of them, and I
Maybe
think this is
one.
it. So where is this team then mentally? I think, if you're going, the physical part is one thing, but I think that they need to refresh themselves mentally, and I think there's also going to be a lot of soul searching done in the executive offices over the next couple of weeks too, because I think some decisions, one way or another, are going to get made. Either if Dennis Allen is back next season, if he's back, there's going to be some major overhauls on this staff. I think
Hmm.
that would have to happen if Dennis Allen is returning. If he's not going to return, I think that decision is getting made over the next 2 weeks. They're not going. They're at this stage. I don't think ownership wants to be behind the curve if they are going to release him. And that
Hmm.
knowing that there's going to be candidates, and you don't want to be in a position like you were last year, where Sean Payton leaves after a big wave of people are already gone. You want to be at the front of
Hmm.
that and see which coaches you might want to be able to poach from somebody else.
Yeah. I think the fact that it's his first year as a head coach, to me, I feel like you give him one more year, at least one more year. I think now if he's lost the locker room, which I don't know, but if he's lost the locker room, then I think a decision has to be made because I don't think you ever get the locker room back once you lose them. So I feel like as long as the guys are still competing, which defensively they are, they're still competing defensively. I think offensively they're still competing, but we're not executing the way we should offensively. Uh, but I think with the coaching staff, I still think you got to bring some other coaches in. Just being honest with you, I think some type of change has to happen. I don't think it has to be major change, but I think some type of tweaks here and there may need to be changed. But I don't think a big old overall or a major change needs to be made. Not after the first year. I
I
think you
think
still got
Pete's
to give
gone.
these guys.
I think
You
Pete's
think
gone
so?
though. At least he's not going to be offensive coordinator next year. I
Okay.
think that either he gets demoted or he moves on. Because it sounded like after the Tampa game that Dennis was kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit,
Hmm.
and just talking about some of the play calls that were made. And we can get into that too, because I think there are 2 drives in particular that I want to ask you about that I think people are going to talk about Mark Ingram going out a yard short. And, that's an unfortunate thing. And it's an unfortunate end to his career. And let's do with that first, because Mark Ingram, his
Hmm.
career is over essentially for the Saints with finding out that
Yeah.
he tore the meniscus in his knee, MCL, excuse me, in his knee. And he had
Hmm.
torn it before
Yeah.
that carry. He tore it in the
Wow.
third
Yeah.
quarter. Remember when he went off the field, and we'll talk about that that
Right.
that field goal drive. That's when he hurt his knee, and they put him back
Yeah.
on the field. So we can have a discussion there too about the training staff and their evaluation of
Hmm.
him and whether he should have been on the field at all in that situation. But
Hmm.
I hate that that's going to be people's final memory of Mark Ingram in a Saints uniform, considering all that he has done and given to the franchise physically, coming up from a guy who people thought was going to be a bust, and then
Hmm.
ending up as the second all-time leading rusher, in franchise history. Eventually, after Alvin Kamara passes him, but right now, I mean, Mark Ingram has had an outstanding career for the New Orleans Saints and in the NFL.
Yeah, he has. He has. And I don't think the fans gonna look at him as, look at it as, this is a bad way to go out. Everybody's career has to end at some time. And I'm not saying that his career is over. I'm not saying that, but everybody's career comes to an end sometimes. And he has an amazing career, uh, especially with the Saints, not all the Saints, but with the Saints, he had an amazing career. When it comes to the training staff, at him actually going back in the game with a meniscus can be tricky. When I played, I had a meniscus tear, and sometimes you can go to the sideline. Some meniscus tears you don't need a surgery for.
Right.
Some you can just allow heal time and it heal up for you. But I could see him going back to the game, especially if because you actually can play on meniscus tear. You can play as long as you have some pressure on it. You can. It's different from an ACL. You're
Right.
not
ACL,
playing
you
in the
got no
game.
stability.
No stability at all. It's different. So I could see them going over there looking at it, and making sure, he still can move, could put pressure on it. And I'm quite sure in the situation the Saints are in, he wants to get back out there and play. And so that's the decision. I think that the training staff and himself make that decision, especially if it's stable. There's no ACL tear. So I'm not so down on them allowing him to go back in the game with an MCL because it's so tricky. Now, if you knew from the jump it was an MCL tear, then that might be different. But evaluating him on the sideline, seeing if there's still stability there, he wants to go back in. He's saying he still can go back in probably because he's a competitor. The way we are right now as a team, I think you give him the opportunity to go back in there and play. But you hate for it to go out the way it did.
Mm-hmm. I want to look at those two drives in the third quarter because I think that's really where the game was lost.
Mm-hmm.
Saints come out after halftime. They get a stop defensively, get the ball right back. Um, and then you get you get the fumble recovery. Cam Jordan
Mm-hmm.
makes a phenomenal play. You know,
Mm-hmm.
pressured the quarterback, then hustles back, punches the ball out. I mean, perfect punch.
Yep.
And the Saints recover. Carl Granderson gets the recovery. Saints in business. Boom. Drive. You get down. You're at the 11-yard line. So you can still make a first down here. You're not in goal situation. You don't have to be in the end zone. You can still make a first down.
Mm-hmm.
First play, good play. They pick up 7. They threw a nice
Mm-hmm.
little swing pass to Kamara, pick up 7, 2nd and 3.
Yep.
On that play, though, Levante David gets hurt. The Bucs' best linebacker, Levante David, the
Mm-hmm.
All-Pro, gets hurt, goes to the
Mm-hmm.
sideline. The Saints decide on 2nd and 3 to go to Ingram up the middle. And I'm watching the Manning cast at the time, right? And Peyton
Mm-hmm.
is sitting there saying, Peyton's like, and Eli both, they're both like, you go right back to Kamara. It's like you like whoever came in for David, you want them isolated on Kamara. It's like before
Right.
the players even snap, they're like, go to Kamara, go to Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
Saints handed up the middle, no gain. Now you got third down. 12 men in the huddle. The things that we've talked about all year, the mental part of the game where the Saints have failed over and over again. 12 men in the huddle, which should never happen.
No.
You lose 5. You get the 5 back, throwing it to Taysom. So you back down there on third
Mm-hmm.
and 3 again. And you got, 4th and 3. And now you got to kick the field goal. Where before you might have been in 2-play territory trying to go in with that
Mm-hmm.
defense and saying, Bucs can't go 99 yards against this defense.
Right.
I haven't seen him do it in any of the time that I've been coaching this defense, Dennis Allen, that you've been coaching. The Bucs have not gone 99 yards against you.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, in that situation, before that penalty, before that I think I think they should have gone play action on 2nd down because I think 3rd down you have the option to still run it. If the play action
Yep.
don't work on 2nd, you can still run it on 3rd because it's 2-down territory to me. And I think that they got conservative there. And then on the next drive, again, you're in the same position. You're down around that in the hottest part of the red zone.
Yep.
giving it to Ingram again in those situations and not Kamara. And then the touches were all very conservative plays. They didn't test the end zone at all. They didn't try to get either of their receivers into the action of that. It seemed everything was trying to be underneath to either the running backs or to Taysom. And I thought that those two drives where you come away with 6 points instead of 14, the game's over if you get touchdowns on those drives. If you get one touchdown out of those two drives and a field goal, the game is over. And I just thought that was where the game was lost.
Definitely. You got to score touchdowns, especially when you that deep in the red zone. You got to come away with touchdowns, especially playing against a Tom Brady led team. Because Tom Brady does what Tom Brady does, and he did exactly what he's supposed to do, what he's known to do in the fourth quarter. So like you said, those drives right there really affected the game. And to me, the penalty hurt the most. To me, even though you got the yardage back, but the penalty hurt with the 12 guys in the huddle. To me, I feel like that is not just on the players. I think some of it is confusion. And with coaching as well, it's confusion because there's no reason why you should have 12 guys in the huddle unless they're confused on what personnel is in the game. And the personnel that gets called is offensive coordinator makes a personnel call. So
and usually this is when two plays already been called in this situation.
Yes.
That personnel grouping already has the options. This is what we're going to do, the looks. So that, it seems,
Yes.
it just felt weird that there were 12 guys in that situation.
Yes, it should never been 12 guys, but you have to score touchdowns. And you have to isolate the guy that just came in. You got to isolate him, Kamara. You have to do that. But I can also see on the other side of it where they're just not thinking that right now.
But again, you don't give it to Taysom you don't let Taysom do something with it in any of those situations. You still didn't put the ball in his hands and let him on a 3-yard situation. I'd rather give it to Taysom than give it to Ingram going straight ahead when I know all night the running game has not worked. You're averaging something like 2 yards a carry.
Yeah.
And you think you're going to run in the heart of the Buccaneers defense, which is their strength. The middle is their strength.
True.
It didn't make sense to me. It just didn't.
Yeah, the play call was a little off, but you got to score. You have to score a touchdown some way, somehow. Like I said, the play action game definitely would have worked on that. You hate to lose it on those two drives, but I can't just blame it all on those two drives.
No,
because if you look in the fourth quarter, Tom Brady was Tom Brady.
But like you
that
said,
last drive.
You get him man opportunities.
Yes, that last drive, he was taking what we was giving him underneath, but they also had some receivers making plays. They was making plays in crunch time. And honestly, they scored before they scored a touchdown, but they got a penalty and called it back. And then a couple more plays later, they score again. So I mean, you hate to lose that way, but you got to take your hat off to Tom Brady. He did what Tom Brady do. Defensively, we played our tail off again. Holding them to 3 points to the fourth quarter, and the 3 points came in the first drive. In the first quarter. So the whole Tampa Bay to 3 points to late in the fourth quarter, but they also scored like 2 touchdowns within 5 minutes, 6 minutes, or something like that. So. But our defense played well, but offensively, we still have to play complementary football. We was 35% on third down. That's not going to cut it. So in defense, defense created 2 turnovers for us. I would never thought to go into a game where we're playing Tampa Bay, where we always have their number.
Yep.
And you tell me we're going to be up 16-3 with late in the fourth quarter, and we have 2 turnovers. We have no turnovers that we don't win that game. No way we don't win that game. So I think some changes have to be made. I don't know how major the changes have to be made, but some tweaks has to be made, definitely.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be as far as the rebuilding of this team goes, because there are some good studs in the walls. There's some good studs in there. The whole house isn't rotten, but sometimes you got to give up some good stuff to get better. And that's going to be a real
hmm
tough question as to when you start thinking about players, and how do you get better and what assets do you have in order to maybe get some picks back. I would imagine certainly the big thing is waiting on what Sean Payton decides and what
hmm
team decides to pursue him and what the compensation the Saints get for him. That's going to be a big thing this offseason, certainly. And then position wise, I guess you do have to start making decisions with some of your vets, like a Cam Jordan or a Demario Davis. If you're going to start going younger with this defense, Tyrann Mathieu, all these guys, if you start going younger with your defense and younger with your offense to start a rebuild, what's their value? Do you trade them? Do you hold them on to be veterans as transitional players and get them off your cap? I mean, the Saints got a lot of hard questions to ask this offseason.
For me, defensively, I don't think you make a lot of changes defensively. Defensively, they've been the most consistent the entire year, even dating back to last year. This defense has been consistent. I think if you're going to make changes, the changes have to come from the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I think you leave your defense intact, especially when you get your secondary back. Because we was beat up in the secondary. You start getting those guys back. You get Lattimore back. That's going to make that defense even better. So I don't think you really mess with your defense too much unless it's a salary cap issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if
That's
there's
what I'm
no,
thinking is the salary cap with those
yeah.
vets.
Now offensively, I think you have to find, I think you have to find a running back, and I think you have to find a quarterback, or what you're going to do with Jameis. I think those two positions, when it comes to players, the running back position and the quarterback position, has to be addressed when it comes to players. But defensively, I don't know if you do too much defensively because
I,
they've been consistent the last 2 years.
I think the one thing you're looking for defensively is you've got to get more rush. Like that's the Saints, 54 dropbacks at least for Tom Brady last night, and only one sack and not a lot of pressures. And that's Tom Brady,
hmm
of course, but 54 dropbacks, you want to get some touches on somebody. And
Right.
that's been a problem for the Saints this year is just generating consistent pass rush, especially up the middle. So I think defensive tackle is another area that they'll again try to pursue. You're hoping again that Peyton, um, you know, um, that Peyton this year it starts to develop into a defensive end, but the Saints really need to get some more pass rushing, I think. And then the offensive side, like I said, it's stabilizing the line, getting a bell cow running back to get Alvin Kamara back to what he's supposed to be doing. Because like we
hmm
talked about last week, he's getting way more carries and way fewer catches. And
hmm
that is not the formula for success for Alvin Kamara. It's just not. It's 10 to 12 carries, 7 to 8 catches. And right now he's getting
hmm
15 carries and they ain't going nowhere. And he's not getting catches. I mean,
hmm
Monday night he had 2 catches. And the same, whatever they do offensive philosophy wise, I think the receiving core is actually, I mean, Rashid Shaheed,
Yes.
this
Where
dude
he
can do
come from?
everything. He can return
Everything.
kicks, he can catch. Man, okay, so now you found another rock, diamond in the rough. You got
Yep.
Olave. You can restructure Michael Thomas's contract, which I'm sure the Saints will, and he's going to have to do anyway, knowing that he's missed basically 3 years now. And
Yep.
then, you know, Jarvis isn't around. His contract comes off the book, so you have that option. The Saints are going to be okay at receiver. They have to
hmm
address tight end. They will have to address tight end and figure out, get a more experienced guy to go along with Troutman probably. But again, that's
Yeah.
something you can do later in the draft or in free agency. But yeah, like we said, the studs are good.
hmm
It's not a bad football team. It's just I think that like you said, the communication this year, the execution, and there's a disconnect somewhere that
Yeah.
just is not in the quarterback position, of course, not having continuity there.
Yeah. And I definitely think you have to address, like I said, I don't think you make major changes to the coaching staff, not after the first year, but I think you have to make changes. And when I say major changes, I'm saying not fire Dennis Allen. That to me, that's a major change if you change the head coach. I don't think you fire Dennis Allen after the first year unless he has lost the locker room. I
And
think
that's
once
gonna
the
be the
coach loses,
question.
that's the question. I think once the coach loses the locker room, you never get it back. You never get it back because the guys that been there, they're still looking at you side eye. They still don't trust you. They still have second thoughts. If you can coach, then guys not going to trust the process. And if you don't trust the process, you're not going to get anything done. So hopefully he continues to have the locker room behind him and pushing him. But I still think some type of coaching change has to be made or tweaked. But I don't think you fire Dennis Allen from the jump.
Yeah, I think the offensive philosophy has to change. There has to
Mm-hmm.
be. I think this is a team that's more suited for tempo now,
Mm-hmm.
and we saw at different times, even when Jameis was under center, there were times the tempo helped. It doesn't have to be necessarily no huddle, but they
Mm-hmm.
need tempo. The faster this team moves, I think is
Yep.
better. It cuts down on the thinking time. It cuts down on the mistakes. That's why I think Drew was like that. Drew didn't like that huddle. He wanted to be there, call the plays at the line. It was a rhythm thing. It was okay. I could see it. I know who I've got, my personnel, and I think that's part of it too. So I think in the offseason, I would imagine if they don't bring Jameis back, that they do ask Andy to come back to be the
Yes.
backup again, and they go out and try to draft somebody, maybe trade up back into the first round or get somebody in the second or the third round as a quarterback and see if you can develop him and then go out and sign a free agent as well. Maybe they bring in Baker Mayfield for a look, during trainer camp or something like that. I don't know.
No.
I'm just saying,
No,
I'm
I
just like,
don't.
there's not a lot of available options this year in
Right.
the offseason. So I'm like, but the quarterback question is going to be the biggest thing that hangs over this franchise for the entire rest of the season. And I think now, too, if you're out of it, which you are,
Hmm.
can we play Jameis? Can we just see? Can we
I
just
think I
see?
think I think you have to play him. You have to know what you have. You have to know what you have in James because truthfully, you still don't know what you have. The season when he was on a Pro Bowl level, he got injured, and then this year he got injured. So you really don't know what you have in Jameis. You don't know. You know he's a good quarterback, but durability wise, is questionable.
Mm-hmm.
He's been hurt the last 2 years. And you really just, I want to see him play a full season and see what he does. See what we can do with a full season. So now I feel like you have to play him. You have to play him. I think you sit Andy Dalton, not because Andy Dalton has been a bad quarterback. He actually played solid this year for his role as a backup
Right.
quarterback. You don't expect your
But
backup
there's
quarterback
all
to come in and play an entire season. He need to give you about 2 or 3 games for your starter to come back healthy. But for him to jump in and play almost an entire season, I think he's done a great job for being a backup.
but that's
But
what
you got to
like
have somebody else in there.
that ceiling for him is so
That's it.
hard. He can't
Yes.
go any higher than that. And I think it's
Hmm.
also in the Saints' best interests, even if you don't plan on keeping Jameis to play him, because I think it's doing right by Jameis. And that
Hmm.
stuff resonates around the league. Other players pay attention to that kind of stuff because what you're doing is you're allowing that man, if he's not coming back to you, you're at least allowing him to put some tape out there for the next team. And,
Yep.
I think that look, the Saints aren't gaining anything. You know what I'm saying? Like all there is at this stage, you've already lost your first round draft pick. It's going to Philly. You're not,
Hmm.
like I said, the playoffs are a pipe dream at this stage. So what are you trying to do? Of course, you want to still win some games, but everybody on the team knows that winning games is just an exercise at this point. There's not an outcome. There's not something that you can play for other than the professionalism of like, I want to play and win. This is what I want to do as a
Yep.
competitor. I don't think you're putting your team in any worse position to compete if you put Jameis under center if he's healthy.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like you say, you're going out there, you're going to compete. Even though you know your playoff hopes are kind of dwindling away, there is no hopes really. But you're also competing for your job. That's what you're doing now. You're not just competing for your job for the Saints, but you're competing for your job to get picked up somewhere else just in case things go south for you on this team, no matter who you are.
Yep.
No matter if you're a starter, no matter if you're a backup guy, no matter if you're a special teams guy, everybody is competing for their job because I think everyone knows when you have a season like this and your expectations was through the roof, changes are going to come. They're going to come. You just don't want to be on that side of the change, So everybody's playing for their job now.
It's just a really difficult position for the organization to be in because they haven't been in this place before. And it's it's different, I think, rebuilding from failure. Like when you have a group that before Sean Payton came in, the end of the Jim Haslett era was real bad.
Hmm.
So that transition is a lot easier to say we're going to sweep this out and move on. The Saints are in a much different position because you're not, again, we're not taking over you didn't take over a bad situation. What you took over was a good job, a job that where people, like I said, before the season, were picking the Saints as potentially representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. And this
Hmm.
all falls apart. And I think that the organization, you have that question of how competitive can we be now and still, and that's what this franchise has done a fantastic job of over the years, is being competitive in the now. And then also, what are you projecting for the long term future now of this team? And what's it going to be as some of these older faces who have been the faces of the franchise do start to move on?
Yeah. You know, we got some decisions to make. I think all around the board, and trust me, everybody will be evaluated.
Everybody.
Everybody, from the
Mickey,
players to the coaches.
I told you Mickey Loomis was going to be in Tampa. I told you he was going to be, and he didn't. He wasn't looking happy. I mean, when you end up on the list with the Falcons now, and see that's the two worst games, like they said, Tom Brady, the two longest odds. Now the Saints are on the list, and the
Yeah.
only game that was longer odds for him to come back and win was the 28-3 game against the Falcons. The Saints are now on the list, the second biggest odds of his
Wow.
career coming back because they had a 97% chance of winning that game with 5 minutes to go.
How do you lose that? That's crazy. How do you lose that? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't. But it is Tom Brady. It is Tom Brady. But we don't drop that one, man. We got to win that one.
Got
We got to
and
win
now
that one.
look, you get to buy. If anything in these last few weeks, you better beat the Falcons at home. You
Right.
better beat the Falcons at home. that's all. That's
Right.
all I know. If nothing else goes right the rest of this season, you better beat the Falcons at home.
Yeah.
Coming
And
off a
you want to
bye,
end. Yeah. And you want to end on a good note.
yes,
Even if you don't even make the playoffs, if you don't make the playoffs, you want to end on a good note. I take prime example. I want to say it was last year, year before last. You take the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins started out like 1-7
yep.
to start the season out, and all of a sudden they win like 8, 9 games in a row to finish the season. That's how you end on a good note, and that momentum swings right into the next season. And you see what Miami's doing now. Before Tua got hurt, Miami was on a roll. So for the Saints, you want to end, even if you don't make the playoffs, you want to leave a good taste in the owner's mouth, the GM's mouth, the head coach mouth. Leave a good taste in their mouth about the team, about how you play individually. So everybody got to take it upon themselves to put their best foot forward these last games and see what happens.
They can still finish 500 in the division. You
Hmm.
win, you beat Atlanta, you beat Carolina, you're 500 in the division, and that's something. You know what I mean? You don't be last in the division. Don't do that.
Right,
And so
right.
that's still on the table, and that's a pride thing too. So yeah, there's still stuff to play for, even if it's not the playoffs.
Hmm.
Like I said, brother, they got the week off this weekend, so it's 2 Sundays in a row with no Saints football.
Hmm.
But we'll be back next week and get folks ready for that Falcons game. Anything you want to say before we get out of here for the weekend?
Nah, I mean, just fans, who that? Keep your head up, man. It's a long year.
Keep your
And it
head
has
up.
been a long year. Keep your head up. We still rolling. We still believe.
We still believe it. He's Terrence Copper. I'm David Grubb. This has been Believe in Saints.